Good morning, everybody. My name is Vivek Mahbubani. I am your MC for today. And thank you again for joining the International Symposium of Social Enterprise Summit 2021. Now, there's no denying it. Life, thanks to COVID-19, has been very hard for many of us, right? Things have been challenging. We've had new things. We're wearing masks. Half our faces covered. What do we do? It's been a real challenge to not just us, but also our planet as well, right? So think about it. The planet's all over the place. We're all over the place. We can't travel too much. So a lot of things have to get changed, which is why today I find that all of us have a very strong urge to think of a regenerative mindset. And that is why today's theme, Building Blocks of a Regenerative Future, is our theme for this year. But when we say regenerative, what does it mean to you? Well, I tell you what, to kickstart your mindset, let's hear what others have to think about regenerative. Let's check it out.
In past years, our community faced very tough times with people on their masks and also are all isolated.
You'll see how badly we've destroyed our planet.
For example, decades ago in Muiwong, we used to grow rice. That's where I live now, and I walk around and I see the soil is basically clay now.
Our planet is already sick. It is not enough just to do less harm to it. We need to do more good to it so we can restore it.
So for me, regenerative is a word that is all about hope, all about having a vision for how to live a better life in the future.
Recognize that something is wrong and that needs healing.
Co-create some new values and possibilities that we have never seen.
You're trying to repair and renew, revitalize something that may have been broken down. And I think we can also do that by coming together.
Not doing too short of too much.
So we can restore it to a better state for our next generations.
Real regeneration starts within ourselves, within personal work.
It is a transformation from are we doing harm to are we doing better?
Get something from that old item and try to add something better to it.
To create a net positive impact on a continual basis.
Collaboration,
Healing,
Energy,
connection,
Empowerment.
regenerative as one of the most important and most wonderful aspects of what we can do in life.
we are connected to everything in the world. We are not separate from the river, from the trees, and from the land.
Back to basic, back to living is the key point of achieving regenerative future.
share what they want and also their opinions openly.
It has to start with actual honest introspection of ourselves.
Simply, we need to unite to create a better demand for green products. We need to unite to act personally, socially, or on a national or international level even.
We need people to share the same vision.
Be open to share their resources and also their needs.
Together, we build a communities of mutual trust towards a better understanding of how we can live together harmoniously and in a sustainable way.
But in fact, there are tons of approaches that are related to our daily lives.
I think as long as we are be inclusive, catalyze with positive changes.
So a better future for ourselves and for everyone else.
We need an ecosystem with more like-minded stakeholders to join the force to drive bigger impact.
Different sectors should combine their experiences, their knowledge, and their professions in their criteria to co-create some new values and possibilities.
Really focus on the self-development to come closer to the true self and to understand who we are and deal with our shadows so that we can move forward with much more love and kindness.
With our action and our belief, every one of us in the community can take a small steps to make a huge difference.
We need more opportunities like the Social Enterprise Summit to help bring the people together, bring the ideas together.
I believe we are one of those who are working on this.
Use your strengths, use your passion, and do whatever you can in your role.
All of us, including you and me, are the missing pieces for regeneration.
The future is worth fighting for.
Let's build
a
regenerative future.
There we go. I'm sure that's definitely kickstarted ideas in your mind of what is a regenerative future. And with that, let's take a time now to hear from our keynote speaker, Mr. Charles Eisenstein, who will share his thoughts on the topic of regenerative. Now, Charles is a countercultural intellectual, and he is the author of Sacred Economics, Money, Gift, and Society in the Age of Transition. Today, he will share how mankind should return from the derailed story of separation to the story of interbeing and onto the road to reforming our society. And with that, Charles, it's over to you. Take it away.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I hope everybody can hear me here. Really happy to be here and to have this engagement with this part of the world, Hong Kong and the Greater China region. I spent 10 years of my life living in the area. I lived in Taiwan. I visited Hong Kong many times. So it feels really good to be here. I'll just say, 很高兴有这么一个机会参与社企民间高峰会. So that's all the Chinese I will talk for now. I'm going to give my presentation in English. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by describing the special historical moment that we are in and the nature of the transition that we face. And I'm going to use a few slides for that. So if you'll just allow me to share my screen here. And there we are. Okay. Yeah, so the first slide is a little bit alarming. Here we have a graph of global population since 4000 BCE. And in the introduction, somebody mentioned that, we face rapidly growing population. But do we? Take a look at the next slide. As you can see, population growth has slowed and shows signs of leveling off. Depends on which demographer you ask, but it could very well, the planet could very well reach its peak earlier than 2100. It could even be in 2050. Birth rates are declining all over the world. So this points to the possibility that we are facing a new era, something that we've never actually faced before. Here's a few more. Here's China's population, again, rapid growth, slowing down already. And probably in 100 years, population of China will be lower than it is now. Japan, same pattern. Okay, now here's a completely different realm. Here is a graph of ecosystem biomass over time. You can see that for an immature ecosystem, the total biomass and the production of new biomass increases very quickly. But so if you have a bare field of just dirt, the weeds come and they grow very fast and they compete with each other for sunlight and for soil. But over time, the ecosystem becomes more complex and it becomes mature. So interesting, the same pattern here with human population and an ecosystem. Same thing with the growth of a child, a period of rapid growth followed by a leveling off. And we don't see that as a problem. If my son, who's 16 years old, stops growing, he grew maybe 10 centimeters last year and 8 centimeters the year before, and this year he only grew 4 centimeters, and next year maybe 1, I'm not going to be concerned about that. I'm not going to feed him growth hormones and try to sustain growth, am I? I'm going to accept that he has reached a level of maturity and that another kind of development begins. So please, as I'm saying this, try to map this onto the economy, onto human society, that we might be entering a stage of maturity. Energy consumption follows the same pattern. I didn't have the graph going back far enough, but again, a sharp rise followed by leveling off, and even a decline. Here's Germany. Korea, same pattern. GDP, that graph looks a lot like population growth, but if we look at it more closely, we will also see that it is starting to slow down. In the developed countries, it has slowed down considerably. And even China, the rate of growth, it's still growing, but the rate of growth is declining over time. So this is the nature of the transition that we face. It's more than just, as I was saying, more than just powering growth with a different set of fuels, switching to renewable energy. It is much more than that. It is a change in the nature of our economy and the nature of our relationship to nature. So in a growing economy, society, the human realm expands, the amount of cultivated land expands, the wild shrinks, the amount of nature that goes for human purposes expands, and therefore nature becomes impoverished. Life becomes more mediated by technology. We begin paying for more and more things that early societies did in a gift economy. Society becomes more and more centralized, and we are oriented toward more of the things that we can measure, more monetary value, but maybe less of other social values. And this has been going on for hundreds of years. But just like that teenager whose growth is slowing down, the same thing is happening to our society, which offers a problem, but also an opportunity. And so here we see some of the characteristics of a post-growth era. Just like in an ecosystem, there is increasing relationship, increasing complexity. For society, it means that no longer are we taking and taking and taking from nature, but we're also giving to nature. That's what regeneration is. No longer looking at the world in terms of how can we maximize human interest, but we understand that the well-being of the soil, of the water, of the rainforests is intimately connected to human well-being. We're no longer seeing ourselves as separate. As I say, the age of separation is coming to an end. And the age of separation from each other, where we think of humans as mutually competing economic actors, where more for me is less for you. That is not true in a mature ecosystem either. A keystone species provides nourishment for all the other species, and each species contributes something important for the whole ecosystem. And you can see now how this is relating to social enterprise. Let's see if I get to that. Yeah, so social enterprise would be, well, regenerative agriculture, I kind of mentioned that. What's good for the soil is good for humanity. Circular economy, no longer taking linearly from nature, but but returning everything to nature in a form that nature can use. So we're no longer separate from an exception to nature. And I won't mention I'm not going to, I need you to save time now, so I'll just go on and say something about social enterprise, because social enterprise is a radical departure from traditional business, in which the purpose of the business is to make money. If you read an economics textbook, that's what it says, the theory of the firm, it's to make money. But a social enterprise, making money is secondary. Its main purpose is to serve some need of society or the planet. And yes, it needs money in order to do that, but that's not the purpose. It's one of the many factors that enables the enterprise to do that. So we can say, maybe I'll get into these. Yeah, let me talk. Okay, now I'm going two directions at once. We can say that social enterprise exemplifies a way of thinking that belongs to the future, or shall we say belongs to any future worth having. Because in a post-growth world, not every enterprise and not every economy can continue to grow and grow at the expense of others. At some point, we have to understand our purpose in a different way. So I'll mention one more aspect for people interested in economic policy, which is the money system as a whole. We hear a lot about, this ancient or hundreds of years debate about capitalism versus socialism. But one thing that is lost in that debate is what actually is capitalism. It depends on what capital is. Capital, meaning money and property, itself depends on agreements in society among human beings. So when money is created in a different way, not created as interest-bearing debt, then economic growth is no longer necessary for the economy to function. Because when money is lent at interest into existence, then there's always more debt than there is money. And it is lent to those who are going to make even more of it, which means create even more goods and services, convert more of nature into products, convert more relationships into professional services. So that's a lot there. I just wanted to mention that, maybe for future discussion. So yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen so you can see me again. So as you can see, we are undergoing a profound transition. A different conception even of why human beings are here. The old story had us ascending, becoming the lords of nature, even transcending nature completely, maybe. Maybe our future was to go off into outer space and no longer even need nature. Living in that story, we began to make it real. We began to destroy the rest of life on Earth that would render us then alone here. But now something else is stirring in our hearts. We no longer want to be alone. We care for nature not only because it is essential for human survival. Even if it weren't essential for human survival, who wants to live on a concrete planet with no other life, with no beauty, with no nature? We're falling in love with the world, with the whales, with the forests, with the water. We want to rejoin the community of life. We want to contribute to life, become a participant and not a dominator. So social enterprise and regenerative thinking are part of this vast transformation, I would even say, in human consciousness. So yeah, I think that it will give you some food for thought. It really has been my honor to address you here, to address so many people who are moved by this upwelling spirit to dedicate their lives to something more than just growth, more than just profit, more than just expansion. So thank you so much. And I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Charles. Very, very insightful. What I really like the most is your comparison to the 17-year-old kid who's not growing as much as you expected, and not to pump it with growth hormones, but kind of think like, wait, maybe this is a different phase in his life. And instead of saying, why aren't you growing? It's like, what other thing can you do? I'm very curious because you also mentioned the idea of that we need to change the mindset of, instead of thinking of growth from numbers to thinking about returns. Would you say that we're at a phase like we're like 20 years old, we're not thinking about the height that we're growing, but maybe like other facets of our life? Would you say that's what you're suggesting for the future? That instead of using the traditional number system to look at the way we're growing, is to think about other ways that the economy or life can grow from a more beneficial way to the planet? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, part of it is to incorporate other metrics for success besides GDP growth. This might be the idea of gross national happiness, or there's other metrics that can help us understand what well-being is. But even beyond that, what about the things that we can't measure? This is a question to ask. How can we guide public policy and guide our own choices in life and in business when maybe you can't measure the results, but so I guess you can feel them?
So you're saying it's more like kind of we're looking inwards, right? So very often when you get to a certain age, you're thinking about how am I feeling internally rather than what I can see externally. So you're saying as well with the future, sometimes we have to think of new ways to measure because it's not something that's obvious. As you said, gross national happiness can be very difficult to measure as well.
Right. It's the old mindset. You are supposed to make decisions based on this cost-benefit analysis, where you convert everything to one quantity, money. But even environmental thinking sometimes falls into the same trap of defining green according to just low carbon. But there are so many other things to consider, so many other values, so many other signs of health. Some of them can be measured and some of them can't be. And so we need to expand our thinking beyond money thinking, which reduces everything to a number.
All right, fair enough. That's a very good point as well, as just changing the mindset of different ways to measure something. And actually, that's a very good point because it moves on to our next session. I want to invite our keynote respondents to share with us and discuss about what does business and economy of a regenerative future look like, and to maybe even suggest a unifying narrative to bridge different sectors and generations and nations as well. Where can we go in the future? And of course, just to let you know, everyone over here, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the discussion. And for our online audience, you can also raise your questions through the chat box in Zoom. So make sure you can participate. Anything you're curious about, let us know. And having said that, I would like to now invite the facilitators of the session. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Andre Kwok, founder and chairman of the board, Good City Foundation Hong Kong. And round of applause, please. And also I'd like to invite Ms. Dorothy Lam, co-founder and chief catalyst of Dream Impact Hong Kong, to the stage. And joining the two of you also are our keynote respondents, Mr. James Law, JP, founder, chairman, and CEO of Cybertexture Architects Hong Kong, and co-founder and CEO of HomeD, as well as engineer Andrew Young, associate director, innovation of Sino Group. Everybody, please take a nice, comfortable seat. Let's talk about the future, how we can make it more regenerative. And there you have it. I'll pass the stage over to the four of you, and everyone can have a nice, lovely discussion. Take it away.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Charles, for sharing. It's been a long time waiting for this moment, and I think I've heard of your name through another groups in Hong Kong, and you really bring that new energy of combining both the spiritual awakening part of how today we're awakening in consciousness, right? We're not just doing business. We need to think about business with a purpose, and combining that with economics, right? I think your perspective really gives that combination of the two angles. And before we go into the conversation, we'd just love to invite everyone to just close your eyes and do a few breathing exercise and just really taking in what Charles had just said. So just 2 breaths together, just inhale, feeling your own body and being grounded in this moment. And exhale through your nose, and inhale again. And exhale. And so just feeling really present right now and soaking in all the words that Charles has just said, right? Moving beyond profit, moving beyond growth. We're going into an age of maturity. We're not in competition, right? We want to be in harmony. And so I just love to start the conversation maybe with a quote from the book. Actually, I think it also relates to both Andrew and James's work. And I think Charles mentioned in the age of separation. Today, ours is an economy of separation. Standard commodities that bear no relationship to the individual user. Buildings that bear no relationship to the land they occupy. Retail outlets that bear no connection to local production, and products made in obliviousness to their effects on nature and people. None of these can be possibly beautiful, alive, or whole. Accordingly, to create objects with soul, objects for a rich and beautiful world, we must invest with them life, self, and humanity. In other words, we must invest them with something of ourselves, no matter what money system we have. If it does not induce or this kind of creative process, then we will not be living in a sacred economy. And by the same token, for fostering within ourselves a realization of sacredness inherent in materiality, and by aligning our work with that sacredness, we lay the social and psychic foundation of an economy in which more and more of the things we make and do for each other are beautiful, personal, alive, and ensouled. And so I think it touched upon land, so that in architecture and also buildings and outlets, right, Hong Kong. So I'd love to ask both Charles, James, and Andrew, what brought you to this turning point in realization in the work you do to create a more beautiful world? So Charles, maybe we'll start with you.
Well, let me hear from
minute.
Let me hear from the other gentlemen first. I've been
Sure.
talking a lot. Let's start with them, if that's okay.
So maybe I start first. First of all, it's a real honor to be here. I was so inspired by what Charles said. It resonates so much with everything that I think is so important in this day and age. So specifically to your question, though, about how I got into this direction. So I fell in love with being an architect when I was a small child. And I was fascinated with the topic all the way through, and I practiced for nearly 20 plus years. But it is only recently that I realized that being an architect wasn't about making buildings, wasn't about making landmarks. And to a certain extent, yes, you have to make a living and you have to make some money. But every act that we do, every piece of concrete we pour, every space that we plan affects people. And that in this world, which is full of suffering, every act that we can do in our professions, me specifically as an architect, I can use my craft as a technology for alleviating suffering. So therefore, I found my direction in that architecture can be a regenerative act or regenerative technology to try to alleviate the problems and the stresses and the strains of housing for many people. And specifically here as a Hong Konger, we've suffered from this for a long time. Our economy has been so vibrant, so strong, we've actually left behind a whole sector of people that really can't even afford to have a dignified space. So that's why I'm doing this, because I realize the purpose of my existence through my profession is to use the skills and talents and the luck that I've had in life to become an architect, to enact a positive impact as much as I can on this world.
Yes.
I'm also truly humbled by this experience with the conversations with this group. And what Charles said earlier on also touches a lot on what I believe. So as a trained engineer, and I spent a career over 30 years in innovation technology. But one of the turning point as I dwell into innovation technologies, we do use innovation technology to make money, the single dimension of making impact, making money. But if we all see what the pandemic has brought on to us is we suddenly fear about our living, a betterment of our living. We fear about not having the medicines to treat the pandemics. We fear about the third world not having been able to be vaccinated, we being privileged to be vaccinated. But what value does it cause? What do we go on in the future? So for me, as a trained engineer, engineers are trained to build things for a purpose. But again, the challenging thought is, what is that purpose? And we did so much damage to our environment as we built and built. But what can we do to do something to rebuild that? Yet at the same time, when people are striving for better living, I mean, I see a lot of innovation technology taking away traditional jobs, and a bunch of people make good money. A lot of people lost their jobs. So topics like robotics, are they taking jobs away from people? Do we use robot? I mean, one notion is saying, do we each own a robot to do our daily things so that the robot can do our daily work, that we can start thinking and enjoy our living where we train the robot using our skill set. So again, all these changing thoughts, I think, are really coming into the world as we think about it. So from a business perspective, I'm faced with a daily challenge when we introduce a new technology. What is the return on investment? What is the payback period? Single dimension. But do people think of what is the return on the environment? As Charles said, there are many factors that has not been defined to evaluate a lot of things that we need to do in the future. So I'm really humbled by this experience here to discuss with everyone and hear your views and talk about it. I think we've got so much to learn and to move on.
Well, thank you so much, James and Andrew, for sharing your perspective, how you start thinking about regenerative society. But I would love to write on what you guys have been working, as an experienced engineer and also architect. Well, we are in the world of collaborations, and when it comes to collaboration, we have to deal with multiple different stakeholders like public sector, all these different kinds of private sectors as well, especially establishing large placemaking projects. So do you personally see differences in understanding regenerative society? I mean, when it goes to the ground, how do you see the differences? Do you think when such a big term comes in, the Asian values crash as well? What would be your feedback or opinions?
Yep. I think it's the tradition of left mind versus right mind, the logic versus the feeling. In a lot of what we do, I guess, in general, in how we build things, we have government policy that dictates how things need to be done, certain standards need to be met, and of course, from a commercial perspective, the least cost, etc. But do we ever actually think about, for example, if we buy using concrete, currently we're involved in a project to use recycled plastics into concrete that makes pavers as a beginning. But do we consider the gravels that we use and we replace it by local waste plastic? Can that become a circular economy because we're digging less sand from somewhere else? We are mining less gravels from another quarry somewhere else. We are generating less carbon, but can those credits be consumed or taken into account in a project context? So I guess all these are, I believe we are probably at the beginning of some cycle to look at all this, but which is good that we do need to think about it, because the future is something we really need to give back. I mean, the latest commitment of 1.5 degrees Celsius reduction, I think it's a major commitment, but that's only the beginning. I think there are more dimensions, there are more targets that needs to be set for other dimensions in the field.
Andre, I think what you mentioned is something that we all experience every day. I think our society is organized around a bureaucracy which has evolved over time to continue to create a growth economy that is centrally focused on the commercial returns of society, and hopefully some of that goes back into society. But you also mentioned a very interesting word, which is Asian, the Asian context. So here, we are all here in Hong Kong. We are a successful city in Asia. I really believe that at the heart of being Asian, there is a innate kind of harmony with understanding our cohabitation, our community, and the suffering that is spread all around society. However, our current modern bureaucracy, and I would like to mention everybody here in this realm, including everything from government to companies, to communities, to the individual, we have not yet been brave enough to disrupt our identity. We continue to be in our little box because we are safe in there. But the system, the bureaucracy, is stopping us from unleashing the positive potentials of a much more regenerative future. But actually at the heart of it, as Hong Kongers, as Asians, as Chinese, we know from our history and our tradition, our awareness of the importance of spirituality, of our awareness of our cohabitation with nature. But in the urbanized modern world, in the modern societies like Hong Kong, we have a bureaucratic system in place that we should, just like when we buy a smartphone and we are uploading the next generation of the software as it is upgraded, we need to become relevant for the times. And we're not relevant just for fun. We're relevant for our future. We're relevant for our future existence as an existential issue. So I think this is at the heart of what you're asking about. It's the need for us to have that courage, to have that perspective and that awareness, to know that the bureaucracy around us and the rules around us are there to be updated, to be disrupted, and for us to evolve as quickly and as wisely as possible. And we should do that here in Hong Kong. We are successful as we are unsuccessful. So we have to be aware of the duality and we have to confront it.
This beautiful duality of life. And Charles, perhaps being in Asia for 10 years, perhaps that also influenced your values a little bit. I would love to get to, in order to practice and execute regenerative philosophy, right? What is, from your perspective, the largest gap between the public and the private sector in interpreting a regenerative practice? And how can we pull that gap closer together? I believe both of you work closely with both the public and the private sector as well.
Yes, I think the private sector is defined by its existence to make return for its shareholders. But I think we are seeing private sectors also defining the future in saying we're doing something to give back to the society, like ESG issue is spending money, we're giving something. And I think that needs to be combined with policy to entice the private sector to also, I think it needs to be a tripartite, the policy, the private sector, and the business and the community accepting those values and coming together. So that really will define the new environment that we need to coexist to make a better world. And I think that really, we are seeing the signs, especially through ESG initiative lately. They see a lot more private enterprise really getting the ESG issue, which, as Charles said, is only the beginning.
My point of view is that the public sector and the private sector in this day and age is already at odds with each other. They're not really in symbiosis on a common mission. They are coded to achieve their goals, but in fact, they're very separate. Like Andrew was saying, private sector is for shareholders, and the public sector, supposedly in a benevolent society, is for the citizens. But it's very far apart. In a sense, maybe we shouldn't have a private sector and a public sector. We should just have a human sector. It should be decentralized in the world of crypto and all of this new blockchain kind of environment. Why can we not fuse together the benefits of public and private in governance, in the way in which we plan our future, as opposed to having them as opposing forces within the economy? There always will be opposing forces when you are centralized in that way. So I think in the context of what Charles was also saying is everything he said was about humanity. It wasn't about a certain organization getting, a certain return or a government, doing certain deeds. It is a common mission. So sectors, even this word sector is also already very, very contradicting to the fact that we need to come together with a commonality of philosophy towards regenerating what we have already damaged. That's my point of view. Yeah.
Very well said, James. Thank you so much, and also Andrews. Well, I believe it has been very enjoyable sessions and also dialogues. We definitely like to keep it going on. And given the time limit, sir, I would love to thank you, Charles, James, and also Andrew. And definitely, as Rebecca mentioned in the opening, we have not just the Social Enterprise Summit here in CEC, but also multiple district activities across the year. So hopefully in the future, we're not just bringing the idea in these conference rooms, but definitely going to the districts, all around districts in Hong Kong and even together with other parts of the world. So thank you so much for everyone enjoying, and also let's have a round of applause to Charles once again, James and Andrew. Thank you so much.
All right, so this is a perfect time for Q&A. If anyone in the audience here live with us has any questions, this is your chance. We'll give you a mic to let us know. Anyone who's online watching us through Zoom, in the chat box, type in your question. We'll be happy to answer it. So if anybody has anything curious, now I know normally everybody's pretty shy, like I don't want to be the one saying it. I'll teach you. You raise your hand before you ask the question, just say, yes, my colleague wants me to ask for him. And do it. Or my friend wants to know to ask for her. So anybody has a question, right over there. We have a question over there.
Thank you very much for all the sharing. I found it to be surprising that there's a worry that the Asian value will collapse if we, kind of do what Charles has proposed. In Asia, at least in Chinese, living in harmony with nature, that's very fundamental to our philosophy. So actually, I don't see any conflict. In fact, I'd like to ask Charles to comment on this point, because I understand that he studies Asian philosophy too, whether some of these ideas are actually innate in Asian philosophy and the Asian outlook of the world. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that observation. I'm thinking of ancient Chinese paintings with the Taoist temple in the mountains, and the temple in those paintings is not something that defaces the landscape, but it actually enhances the landscape. It's actually designed and built, architected with respect to the whole environment, and it becomes an enhancement of the world. And that offers a metaphor for what human economy could be. We have all of the technology that we need to actually be a positive force on nature. So yeah, I think that this mindset, I call it a new and ancient story. And it's not only traditional Chinese Taoism that understands this, but there's a tradition in every culture because all cultures originally come from harmony with nature. But we can also see that whether it's the West or China, that lineage, that ancient tradition has gotten almost overwhelmed. Most of the buildings that I've seen in China today are not done in that respectful consciousness that you see in a traditional landscape painting. But yeah, the spirit is there, and we can hold that as precious as we move into the future.
James, have a response to the how can we build regenerative buildings and communities?
One thing I've learned as an architect is that no matter what you do, there are always going to be people who tell you it's ugly. And most of my buildings, people tell me it's pretty ugly. But if you don't try to pursue an egotistical approach to architecture, but you care about the people that are going to be using it, and you care about how it will impact that land, and you care about how the material has come to create that building, the architecture will assume a level of beauty that is nothing about you, but it's all about this place and time and circumstances. But it's also an act that shows the great values that you can inject in and collaborate with to create it, the workers that work on it, the materials have been carefully chosen and can be recycled, and the spaces that are created are entirely appropriate for the community. There's a level of beauty which I think the commercial world doesn't see. Today, we love icons, we love brands, we love, you know, the quick kind of visual orgasm. Sorry, I'm going to use that word. But we don't take time to feel that there's something of true lasting value that will be lasting for generation. And I hope architecture rediscovers that kind of potential in its place in human civilization, as opposed to that kind of quick, you know, party piece that everyone comes in and says, wow, just for that one moment. And then afterwards says, oh my God, I have to clean the windows on that crazy building. So yeah, that's my view as an architect, yeah.
You know, Andrew, at the Innovation Lab, you guys are also innovating on different aspects. And I believe you also was in integrated systems design. So how has that, your personal practice, gone into it?
I think innovation cross boundaries, and application of innovation has cultural perspective. But I think in Asia, we are much more open-minded. So, I mean, the Innovation Lab, we embrace this innovation from a global context, selecting the best to suit the environment in the best context. So I think that there's a lot of political dimension right now about innovation from the East or from the West. But to us, innovation is how it disrupts the life of us and how we live in our current environment. So for me, that isn't like a very polarized East or West culture, but it's about how we take our vision forward as we create a better living environment or better environment for us to work in, etc.
All right, anybody else? We have a question right over there. Raising her hand, hand her over Mike.
Thank you very much, Charles. This is Jasmine. I actually bought your book 2 years ago when I'm doing a fellowship in UC Berkeley. So I remember that you mentioned something for the economy of separation. There's an example about you cannot, like why the society need to, they encourage people not to just volunteer, but actually so for example, if I babysit for my friend, I don't contribute to the GDP. But if I become a babysitter and earn some, money from that, then I contribute to GDP. So when I read about this example, I feel very angry. It's just like that you need to ask your friends to pay you something in order to contribute to the GDP. But then I also I'm curious about how you could transform this kind of, this kind of things into constructive action. My question is, I have a lot of frustration and anger about capitalism at all. But then I want to transform my emotion into a driving power that I can really contribute to the society constructively. So I'd love to hear your thought. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, just to reiterate your point here, a lot of economic growth is simply the transfer of human activities from the gift realm to the money realm. So for example, 100 years ago in a village, in pretty much anywhere in the world, most people made their own clothes, sang their own songs, built their own houses, grew their own food. And much of that was not mediated by money. It was done in extended families, neighbors helped each other. There were systems of reciprocity, and currency was not used. But over time, all of these functions became more and more professionalized, to the point now where people, we don't see, even in many places on earth, people don't even sing anymore. They or create street theater. In China, there used to be street theater. Even when I was in Taiwan in the 1980s, there were still puppet theaters and things like that, and just vernacular culture. So anyway, these have all been professionalized, which means that we don't really have community anymore, because if you don't need the people around you, because you can just pay for everything, then you're kind of alone. So to reclaim this, the energy, the anger, and the grief at the loss of these connections can be turned, as you were suggesting, to a positive purpose. One way to do that is what is called reskilling, to bring back the skills that people once used to take care of themselves and each other in community. But then there's also changes to the legal environment. For example, in some places, people are even beginning to question building codes, which make it impossible to build your own house anymore, or laws that prevent you from raising a garden or keeping chickens in your backyard. So these kind of things. So there are ways that we can reclaim life from money, which is part of a post-growth economy. When the economy shrinks, that doesn't mean that we don't have daycare for our children anymore. Maybe it means that the whole neighborhood cooperatively takes care of the children, just like in the old times. So yeah, I hope that is helpful.
And before we wrap up, I know, Andre, you are also working on a lot of public policy work and also in Southeast Asia. I know you haven't had much time today, but what would be one sentence from your perspective, to see how we can integrate the regenerative practices?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dorothy, for the pops-up question. I think it really echoes, what young generations in Hong Kong even think about it. We thought about livability. I mean, it's the common word that James, Andrew, and even Charles talk about a lot. And what Charles talk about basically is, are we living, or are we building a place where different generations from different sectors, different backgrounds, different social profile can come together, as a place, and we call that term placemaking, and how we can live harmoniously. So I think this is definitely what Hong Kong shall be moving towards together, together, working on that together. And also, if we talk about, developments, I mean, ever since I'm back from Singapore after I graduated, I really feel the Hong Kong is gaining the momentum to build a society again, and also positively together. So I really look forward. I have seen that in Southeast Asia, where communities can thrive, sectors can come across together to do good. And I believe Hong Kong definitely can do the same as well in the coming future, together, definitely over different platforms like Social Enterprise Summit, together with different stakeholders like James, Andre, Andrew, and also even many other friends and partners in the audience here. So I would say that.
Thank you. Now we'll move actually to you, the audience. I would love to acknowledge you as well. So you'll get to participate in an interactive session. So I would love to invite James and Andrew to join us as well off the stage. So maybe I'll have the volunteers to raise up the signs. So we have 6 symbols, as maybe we turn around and see. There are 6 symbols for you to choose to vote with your feet. So is it an upward arrow, a downward arrow, arrow that goes, the cards should be the other way around. Upside down, yep. Or the other way around, it's up to you, right? So it goes down and then up again. There's the circle here, and then one circle, multiple circles, and then a grid with some lines. So you can interpret however you want, and you can stand up now and you can pick up your belongings, or and walk to the symbol that you think the future will be, and just be honest. Is it optimistic or pessimistic? Centralized, decentralized, or void? It's up to you. So now let's go.
Yeah, and also for all our friends who are joining in on Zoom, we have the poll as well. So let us know what you think through the poll online. Can I have James Law and also Andrew to join us down and pick your symbol? All right, everybody else, use your feet, move around. We've been sitting for over an hour. It's time to move your bodies and let us know what you think. Which symbol do you identify? And why do you think a regenerative future? For what reason? Remember, all our friends online, join us on the poll. Let us know what you think. We're going to add up and put in all the results to see what we all think.
Do we have some advocates for specific symbols? You can rally people to go to your symbol. All right. So I see some general movements.
We have a few people
still looking around. Do we have more realists in the back?
That's good. That's good.
All right. We have some background music maybe? No? Okay.
The chattering discussion is nice music.
Exactly. So now, after you can stay in the group in the back. Just stay there. You can pick where. And then now, turn to the person next to you, and share why you're choosing that symbol. You have to share why. Just immediately turn to your left. Find a partner, and share why do you think the future is that symbol. And for the audience online, let's see, can we see the online polling? All right, so the online polling, we see most of them are multiple circles. That's interesting. I think let's see. Oh, that's the same in on site. That's very interesting. What do you think of that?
I think multiple circles, maybe just because they like circles a lot. It reminds us of bubbles.
Bubbles.
Like youth, makes me kind of think, oh, that was a fun time. I like that.
Yeah.
For me, if I were to choose, I would go to the one big happy circle.
You would go to the one big circle.
Yeah,
why would you go to the one big circle?
I just feel that at the end of the day, no matter where you go around the world, you're going to come back in a circle and meet people you met initially. And the things you've done will come back to you, karma, stuff like that. So I always feel everything comes in circles.
Right, full circle. Yeah. For the audience online, feel free to use the chat function. Let's see, anybody in the chat function? Come on, people online, you can share. Why did you pick that symbol? If you picked upward arrow, why did you pick? Are you an optimist?
Yeah. Let us know in the comments, a little quick point of the reason why.
This is a great chance to participate in the summit as well. We want to make this summit as interactive as possible.
That's right. At the end of the day, we could just talk, but it's all about the action, right? So that's why today we want to get you moving. Show us what you think. Don't just say what you think, but show us as well. At the end of the day, it's the action that will change the world. We have one more minute for everybody to pick your positions. If you have any doubts, this is your chance.
I see people not chatting. You should find a new friend. Find a new friend. Talk to someone new.
All right, as we can see so far from the online polling, we got a lot of different people. Most people are still sticking with the multiple circles.
Multiple circles.
Polling.
I would say that's decentralized. Do you think that's blockchain?
Yep. Second one
maybe we have some crypto people online.
Oh, maybe, yeah, they're thinking that. Yeah. We've got the traditional upward arrow. Everyone's thinking optimism in the future, I suppose.
Optimism.
Unless they're looking at it upside down.
Right. Upside down, then it's a downward arrow.
There we go. But so far, everyone online is very optimistic.
Very optimistic.
Don't see any down arrows for the online group.
I'm surprised.
Some of them have been realistic, a little bit down, then up.
That's true.
They're saying,
a rebound.
I'll wait for it. We're going to rethink it, restructure our minds, and change things. A few people though have said an empty space. They feel like what they need is just space.
Yeah, just empty space.
Sometimes you need that, to kind of get your head clear and know what you want to do. It's about the empty space as well. We're giving it a half a minute left. Okay, yeah.
All right. So I hope you made some new friends. We would love you to all find the closest seat back where you were. So we'll have to settle down. I hope the conversation can continue after the next session on public innovation.
That is right.
Right.
So everyone, if you want, please take the closest seat you can find. We've actually found our conclusion. So far, we can see that majority of our audience, no matter online or offline, is multiple circles. Multiple circles is the way we're doing it. And the second biggest group, at least in this room, is the circles, but online
Singular
is
circle.
upward era, I should say. All right. So
let's everybody, come on. Let's go back to the closest seat you can find.
Closest seat without a label on it.
And then we'll listen about public innovation.
There we go. I think everyone's got the discussion started already. Everyone's excited about the future. They're talking a lot. So everyone, please take a seat again.
Everybody, please take a seat. Organizing committee, please be our example. Find the closest seats.
Everyone else, we can have more and more discussions today. We got so much to discuss, but of course, the most important thing is our next session is all about public innovation, and we're definitely going to want to hear about that. So everyone who's near the stage, please go ahead and take your seat.
Please go ahead, take a seat.
We got so much ahead of us. You definitely don't want to miss this by talking just amongst yourselves.
This is just the beginning of the summit. I'm excited.
I love it. I love the energy. The fact that everyone just can't stop. That means it's a very good thing that we all vibe together.
Great energy. People online, hope to see you in person next year so we can have more of this interaction.
Definitely. And you get to move around, walk around. I mean, you can walk around your house as well.
That's
but
true.
It's a bit different when you're with all of us.
Talk to your mother.
Yeah, exactly. Go say hi. Hey, look, Mom, multiple circles.
Build human relationships.
Exactly. That's the most important. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Friends in the front, we'll have to encourage you strongly to go back to your seat.
All right. Once you exchange that last business card, please take a seat real quick over here.
All right, I'll pass the stage back to you, Vivek.
All right. Thank you so much.